After the end of the Second World War, Germany was divided into East Germany and West Germany. By the 1970s, as the Cold War was about to reach its peak, the global situation became tense and complex. In this context, the 20th Summer Olympics, scheduled to be held in Munich, West Germany, attracted worldwide attention. The West German government saw this as a great opportunity to showcase themselves, to build a new image on the international stage through the Olympics, thereby escaping the shadow of their Nazi past. The Olympic Games are held every 4 years, bringing together athletes from various countries and territories. It is a major sporting event, and Germany had experience in hosting the Olympics. In 1916, the 6th Summer Olympics was scheduled to be held in Berlin, but it was cancelled due to the outbreak of the First World War. In 1936, the 4th Winter Olympics was successfully held in Berlin, and by 1972, West Germany had spent $6 billion to build a range of facilities, including an Olympic stadium with a capacity for 80,000 spectators and an Olympic village that could house 15,000 people, all constructed with advanced technology. The mascot for the Munich Olympics was a dachshund named Waldy. This was the first official mascot in the history of the Summer Olympics. Waldy symbolized the persistence, endurance, and agility of the athletes, embodying the spirit of sports and the Olympic spirit. The colors of Waldy also brought a lively and warm atmosphere to the event. From facilities to the application of new technology and creative innovation, many aspects were meticulously prepared by the host. On August 26, 1972, the Munich Olympic ceremony took place as scheduled. More than 7,000 athletes from 121 countries and territories participated, including 42 athletes from Israel. In the ensuing days, competitions went according to plan, with athletes competing during the day and returning to the Olympic Village to rest at night. Everything went smoothly until more than a week later, when an unprecedented crisis quietly arrived. On September 4, 1972. That Monday marked the 10th day of the Olympics. The Israeli team athletes had no scheduled competitions, so they went out to explore Munich under the guidance of their delegation leader. They attended a performance at a theater, where a man played the violin on stage and had dinner with the performers. After dinner, the Israeli athletes happily returned to the Olympic Village. Despite a 2-meter high fence outside, they climbed over it instead of going through the main gate to directly access the second floor of building number 31. Since they had competitions the next day, everyone quickly went to sleep after returning to their rooms. With the theme of the Happy Olympic to create a relaxed and cheerful atmosphere for the athletes, the organizers adopted a different security strategy. They minimized security measures so that athletes could feel friendly and harmonious. The police inside the stadium were unarmed and wore blue uniforms to maintain order. There were no police inside the Olympic Village, and the number of security patrols was also very limited. At 4:10 a.m., as the Israeli athletes were sleeping soundly in their rooms, 8 people dressed in sports gear climbed over the 2-meter fence outside the Olympic Village and broke in. Their objective was clear. They headed straight to building number 31, where the Israeli delegation was staying. Since the opening of the Olympics, athletes often played late and climbed over the fence to enter the village. Security personnel, even if they saw, would ignore it and not intervene. These 8 people carried bags supposedly containing sports gear, but instead held AKM rifles, TT-33 pistols, grenades, and other weapons. They quickly reached the second floor of building number 31. Apartment number 1 was where the coaches and referees of the Israeli delegation stayed. Mr. Yosef Gutfreund was the first to notice the incident. It was his 3rd time serving as a wrestling referee at the Olympics. Around 4:30 a.m., Mr. Yosef Gutfreund heard a strange noise outside the door and got up to check. As soon as he reached the door, he saw a group of masked men with guns trying to break in. Recognizing the danger, Mr. Yosef Gutfreund used his nearly 140 kg frame to block the door, preventing them from entering. He loudly shouted to his teammates in the room to escape. Weightlifting coach Tuvia Sokolovsky heard the commotion, broke a window, and jumped out. However, wrestling coach Moshe Weinberg was not as fortunate. When he woke up, the intruders had already stormed in. Outnumbered, Weinberg and Yosef Gutfreund fought fiercely, but were overwhelmed. The rest in the room were subdued. The intruders dragged Coach Weinberg from the ground and forced him to lead them to the rooms of other athletes. Reluctantly, Weinberg led them past room number 2, misleading them into believing that no one was inside. Then, they arrived in front of room number 3, the residence of the Israeli wrestlers and weightlifters. Weinberg thought that these strong men might be able to overpower the intruders. However, when the door of room number 3 opened, everyone was stunned. Only weightlifter Robano managed to react in time, diving into a fierce fight with the intruders. In the scuffle, he was shot in the abdomen and died on the spot, horrifying the witnesses. Athlete Weinberg grabbed a fruit knife to retaliate, but was shot in the head and collapsed. While the two were in a dire situation, a wrestler managed to jump from the balcony to the ground and escaped. The rest were subdued completely before they could react. By 4:35 am, the intruders had fully taken over apartments 1 and 3, capturing a total of 10 people, 2 of whom were already dead. They herded all the hostages into room number 3 for easier management. The athletes were made to sit next to each other on the bed, threatened with a headshot if they moved. The noise from the struggle woke up the athletes in other apartments in the building, making them aware of the dangerous situation. They hurriedly looked for a way to escape. The Olympic Village Security Committee also received multiple reports about strange noises coming from building number 31 and considered sending someone to check. However, due to the ongoing Olympic events, with nightly parties and fireworks, noise was a common occurrence. Hence, they did not immediately send anyone. It wasn't until 20 minutes later, at 4:15 am, that an unarmed security staffer arrived at building number 31 to investigate. There, he saw a masked man standing in front of an apartment door. When the security guard asked what was happening, the man quickly slipped into the building and escaped through the back door. Sensing something unusual, the guard immediately contacted the police. By 5 am, the Munich police were alerted and had arrived at the Olympic Village. At that moment, the police still did not know what had happened inside building number 31. A witness reported that around 4 am, he saw a group of people climbing over the fence into the Olympic Village. Since they were dressed in sportswear, the man did not pay much attention, assuming it was normal, because many athletes from other countries also often took shortcuts to get to their accommodations. Combining all the information, the police concluded that this group was likely intruders disguised as athletes, with unclear intentions, making it imperative to act cautiously. 2 Israeli athletes who managed to escape revealed suspicions that the intruders were terrorists. They were all masked, armed, and clearly targeting the Israeli athletes. Besides the Israeli athletes, building number 31 was also home to athletes from Uruguay and Hong Kong. Upon inspection, it was confirmed that 11 Israeli athletes were missing, presumed to be held hostage. At 5:10 a.m., the police began to implement a rescue operation for the hostages. During negotiations, a terrorist named Issa, who spoke German, made a demand for the Israeli government to release 234 Palestinian prisoners. Additionally, the West German government was to release 2 other Palestinian prisoners, with a deadline of 9 a.m. If their demands were not met, they would start executing the hostages. However, during the negotiation process, they extended the deadline once more. Issa, whose real name was Ludif Afif, was 35 years old, born in Beirut, Israel, into a family with 4 brothers. His mother was Jewish, and his father was a wealthy Arab merchant. Issa had studied in West Germany and was fluent in German, later working in France. 3 of Issa's brothers were members of an organization called Black September, 2 of whom were imprisoned in Israel. Subsequently, Issa also joined this organization. Black September was an extreme Palestinian organization that used guerrilla tactics to attack Israel, using Jordan as a base to regularly conduct military operations against Israel. Due to strained relations between Jordan and Palestine, in 1970, the Jordanian king, alarmed by the growing influence of the Palestine Liberation Organization, a PO, used force to expel them. Many Palestinians, treated unjustly, bore resentment and formed various organizations, one of which was named Black September, established in that same September. This organization was determined to use violence to achieve its political goals. In 1972, Black September attacked and hijacked a plane full of Israeli passengers, believing that this action would force the Israeli government to make concessions. However, Israeli forces successfully rescued all the hostages in just 1 day. Despite this failure, Black September continued to plan new attacks. At this point, the Munich Olympics were about to begin. Palestine wanted to participate as an independent nation but was denied. Black September was extremely angry and determined to shock the world with a terrorist attack during the Olympics. The leader of this plan was Issa. As soon as Israel received news that their athletes had been taken hostage, they offered to send a special forces team to Munich to assist. They had experience in counter-terrorism and could effectively handle emergency situations. However, despite having no experience dealing with such crises, the West German government refused Israel's assistance, citing that they did not allow foreign armed forces to operate on their territory. The incident occurred while the Olympic competitions were in full swing. That morning, the International Olympic Committee issued an urgent announcement, temporarily suspending all matches from that afternoon onwards. Simultaneously, news of the terrorist attack on the Olympic Village had spread. Thousands of curious onlookers rushed to the Olympic Village, accompanied by a large number of journalists. The scene became chaotic. Notably, hundreds of journalists were present in Munich to report on the Olympics. As soon as the incident happened, they immediately set up cameras, broadcasting live from outside the Olympic Village. Perhaps wanting to maintain their image, the West German police did not prohibit this. Information quickly spread worldwide, drawing public attention even more than the Olympics. At 11 a.m., after receiving the terrorists' demands, Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir flatly refused. She declared, "The Israeli government will never meet the demands of terrorists under any circumstances. If we give in, Israelis worldwide will have no place to feel safe. This is a vile and cruel act of extortion." Because Israel refused to negotiate, the West German government had to find another solution to appease the terrorists and ensure the hostages' safety. The police pretended to agree to the demands to buy time, using the excuse that they needed more time to review and evaluate the details. Subsequently, a group of 5 individuals, including the federal police chief, federal interior minister, Bavaria's interior minister, the mayor of the Olympic Village, and an official from the International Olympic Committee, entered the Olympic Village to negotiate with the terrorists. They offered to exchange themselves for the Israeli athletes, but Issa refused, stating he only wanted the release of Palestinian prisoners and for the world to hear Palestine's voice. Seeing that the conciliatory approach was ineffective, the federal police chief resorted to threats. "You'll never live to walk out of the Olympic Village." However, Issa was not afraid, he chuckled. "That's fine. Many Israelis will join me in the grave anyway." The negotiations yielded no significant results. By noon, an International Olympic Committee official approached Issa, promising them safe passage out of Germany and a large sum of money if they released the hostages. Yet, Issa still refused, saying money meant nothing to them. That afternoon, 2 Israeli counter-terrorism experts arrived to assist the West German police. Among them was a seasoned negotiator named Cohen, who proposed proactively calling the terrorists in the apartment. However, the West German police did not heed his advice. At 4:30 p.m., the West German police took action. They dispatched several plainclothes officers armed with submachine guns, disguised as athletes, to infiltrate the apartment through the ventilation pipes in the corners of the building for a surprise attack. However, the plan was quickly exposed. Lacking control over the scene, the entire police operation was clearly captured by television cameras. People could even see on TV the police wielding submachine guns, MPLs, and MP5s, attempting to rescue the hostages. Some police officers secretly climbed onto the roof to approach the apartment. Meanwhile, the terrorists were watching TV, provided in every room of the Olympic Village, allowing them to easily track the police's movements and quickly discover the rescue plan. Up to that point, the West German police still hadn't precisely assessed how many terrorists were inside the building. They then sent additional officers disguised as cooks, bringing food to the apartment to determine the number of enemies. However, due to a terrorist continuously observing from the balcony, that plan also failed. At 5 p.m., ISA issued a new demand: prepare an aircraft within 2 hours to take them, and the hostages to Cairo, Egypt. The police requested to see the hostages to ensure they were alive before considering the demand. Subsequently, a hostage was brought to the second-floor balcony, wearing a tank top with his hands tightly bound. The West German police contacted Egypt, but no country wanted to be entangled in this trouble. The whole world was watching the event, so Egypt often refused to receive this group. Under mounting pressure, the West German police had to pretend to agree to ISSA's request, using the excuse that they wanted to seek the opinions of the other hostages on this solution, and requested to enter the apartment to check the situation. However, in reality, they were preparing to attack. More than an hour later, at 6:35 p.m., the Federal Minister of the Interior and the Mayor of the Olympic Village were allowed into the apartment where the terrorists were holding the hostages. The scene before them was shocking, with blood all over the walls and floor. 2 people, Weinberg and Romano, were dead, and the remaining 9 were restrained, 1 person sitting in a chair facing away from the window, 4 sitting on one bed, and the other 4 on another bed, all handcuffed and in a state of panic, with 3 terrorists holding guns and guarding them. The mayor of the Olympic Village asked the hostages if they agreed to go with the terrorists to Cairo. The answer was yes, but it seemed unlikely to be their actual thought, as they did not know what else to do in that situation. Given this context, the police decided to temporarily cancel the attack plan, but they still could not determine the exact number of terrorists, only knowing it was between 4 to 5. After considerable deliberation, they devised a new plan to deploy 2 helicopters to transport all the terrorists and hostages to the F-Restenfeldbruck Air Base, 20 kilometers from Munich, to then transfer them to a Boeing 727 for a flight to Cairo. Initially, ISSA demanded to be taken to the airport by helicopter, as it was the closest international airport to the Olympic Village. However, negotiators convinced ISSA that the airbase was a more reasonable option, stating that a Boeing 727 was ready and waiting at the base. ISSA agreed to the proposal, since helicopters could only land in open areas and could not land near Building 31. The route from the apartment to the helicopters had to pass through a parking garage. The police had positioned snipers inside, planning to capture the terrorists there. However, ISA unexpectedly changed plans, stating that he was unfamiliar with the parking garage's layout and feared an ambush by the police, so he wanted to inspect it first. Thus, ISSA and some of his comrades went down to the parking garage, where police snipers were already positioned. Unexpectedly, one sniper hiding behind a car panicked when he saw ISSA approaching and scrambled under the vehicle, inadvertently making a small noise. In the quiet space of the parking garage, even the smallest noise was clearly audible. To mislead the terrorists, a police officer outside the garage shouted loudly, "Just a drill, don't shoot." However, ISSA realized what was happening, became furious, and returned to the apartment. The police's plan was once again exposed. Shortly after, ISSA requested to take them to the helicopters. The police agreed, as they had another plan. By this time, the area outside the Olympic Village was filled with reporters and curious onlookers. making any action within the village fraught with unpredictability. Thus, the police decided to transport the terrorists and hostages via helicopter to the airbase, then take action while they moved from the helicopters to the Boeing 727. They quickly dispatched several snipers to ambush strategic positions at the airport. At 10 p.m., the terrorists moved 9 hostages out of the building into the bus. It was only then that the police accurately determined their number, which was 8, not 4 or 5. The bus arrived at the helicopters. ISSA got off first, using a flashlight to inspect each helicopter. After confirming that everything was in order, he returned to the bus to inform his comrades. They then escorted the hostages onto the 2 helicopters. Previously, believing there were only 4 or 5 terrorists, the police had only deployed 5 snipers at the airbase. Against 8 terrorists, this was clearly a disadvantage for the police. The 5 snipers positioned sporadically at the airport were not professional snipers, but regular police officers assigned the role on short notice due to their participation in shooting contests. The snipers' placements were as follows: 2 on the west control tower, 1 on the roof of a building behind the control tower, 1 behind an abandoned car in the open ground, and the last behind a water pipe obstacle. They were not wearing bulletproof vests, helmets, and were armed not with sniper rifles, but hurriedly borrowed G3 assault rifles from the military. These guns all had issues to varying degrees. Some lacked scopes, others were not calibrated at Sayeva. However, their opponents were 8 fierce terrorists, many of whom were soldiers. The West German police disguised 16 officers as a Lufthansa Boeing 727 flight crew. If the terrorists boarded the plane, these officers would take action. However, their superiors did not fully disclose the situation, so these 16 officers were entirely unaware that they were about to face a group of dangerous criminals. They quickly realized something was amiss, because aside from those in the signal tower, no one else was around. They guessed the operation might be connected to the Olympic Village incident. Growing increasingly fearful, after some discussion, the 16 officers abandoned their post and fled the plane. Now, the responsibility of rescuing the hostages fell entirely on the remaining 5 snipers. At 10:30 p.m., 2 helicopters landed at the airbase. According to the plan, they were supposed to land at a predetermined location. However, Itza became highly suspicious and changed his mind at the last minute, ordering the pilot to land in an empty field next to the signal tower. This meant the sniper behind the signal tower completely lost their line of sight. In such a manpower shortage scenario, the only hope left was with the remaining 4 snipers. The helicopters landed, and Itza commanded the hostages to stay put. He and an accomplice then went to check the Boeing 727. Upon entering, they sensed something was wrong. There was no one inside. In reality, the police never intended to let them leave. Realizing they had been tricked, the 2 terrorists hurried back toward the helicopter. At this moment, the sniper on the signal tower fired. Due to the darkness and the distance, only one was hit in the thigh. However, Itza reacted swiftly, pulling his comrade under the helicopter and returning fire towards the signal tower. Hearing the gunshots, the 2 snipers on the ground immediately took action. A fierce gun battle ensued, and negotiator Anshald Craig The only person at the scene who spoke Arabic climbed up the signal tower and used a loudspeaker to call for the terrorists to surrender. However, they were too enraged to listen. The firefight continued for about half an hour and paused at 11 p.m. At this time, an armored vehicle was en route to the airbase for support. However, due to the large crowd of onlookers causing significant traffic congestion, the vehicle got stuck. During the ceasefire, the terrorists realized there was no way out and decided to go all out. They threw a grenade into one of the helicopters, resulting in a massive explosion that killed 4 hostages. The armored vehicle finally arrived, but it was too late. The explosion was so loud that even those outside the airbase, including journalists and civilians, could hear it. Everyone initially thought the police had succeeded, but in reality, the nightmare was not over. After blowing up one helicopter, the terrorists stormed the other, wildly firing inside. The remaining 5 hostages were all killed on the spot, turning the scene into a hellish chaos. The snipers resumed targeting the terrorists, and the shootout lasted until 1:30 a.m. Finally, 5 terrorists, including Itza, were killed, and 3 were captured, one of whom was pretending to be dead but was discovered. Additionally, a helicopter pilot and a police officer were injured and taken to the hospital. The pilot survived, but the police officer did not due to severe injuries. Tragically, an Israeli weightlifter named Berger was still alive at the time, but the ambulance arrived an hour late. If he had received timely medical attention, he might have survived. At 3 a.m., West German police held an emergency press conference to inform the world about what had happened at the airbase. The 21-hour rescue operation ended with all 11 Israeli hostages dead, along with 1 police officer. It was a disastrous failure for the West German police. The incident shocked the world, and its tragic outcome outraged public opinion, casting doubt on West Germany's ability to ensure security, and it became the target of widespread criticism. Later, there were even rumors that some of the hostages might have been mistakenly shot by snipers. But this could not be confirmed due to the severely burned bodies. One sniper later admitted during an investigation, "I am not a trained sniper." The next day, people gathered at the Olympic Stadium to commemorate the 11 fallen athletes. Except for the Arab countries, the Olympic flag and the national flags of other countries were flown at half-mast. A sorrowful atmosphere enveloped everywhere. On every face was the limitless grief and mourning. 11 empty seats were left in the Israeli sports team section to commemorate the victims. The president of the Olympic Committee announced that the Games would resume after a 34-hour pause. Many believed that continuing the competition during this period of mourning lacked empathy. However, the president of the Olympic Committee affirmed, "Our goal is not to let terrorists achieve their aim of disrupting the Olympic Games. We will continue to compete." The massacre had taken the lives of 11 Israeli athletes. After the memorial service, the surviving Israeli athletes withdrew from all events and brought the bodies of their fallen teammates back home. The attack caused the Olympic closing ceremony to be delayed by 1 day. Security forces were significantly increased inside and around the Olympic Stadium. But the atmosphere was no longer joyful and relaxed as it had been during the opening ceremony. When everyone thought the closing ceremony would go smoothly, the West German police received a report. A plane taking off from Stuttgart Airport had lost contact, suspected of being attacked by terrorists. The news caused panic among everyone. Police feared that terrorists might launch additional attacks on athletes, causing unimaginable consequences. They did not disclose this information publicly to avoid widespread panic. The police urgently dispatched 2 fighter jets to the Munich airspace, ready to intercept if it was determined that the plane was indeed under attack. Fortunately, it was later clarified that the plane's electronic system had malfunctioned and it was not attacked. However, the ordeal was not over. A month later, 2 Arabs attacked and hijacked another KLM airplane during its takeoff. They demanded the pilot fly to Munich and insisted the West German government release 3 terrorists captured during the Munich Massacre. Concerned for the safety of the passengers on board, West Germany conceded, putting the 3 terrorists on another plane bound for Libya. Upon their return, the 3 even held a press conference detailing the Munich attack, declaring it a righteous act, and proclaiming Israel as their eternal enemy. In stark contrast to West Germany's concession, late in 1972, Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir took a firm stance. Unable to accept the release of the 3 terrorists, she decided on retribution, making them pay the price. Under her directive, an assassination team named Wrath of God was formed, targeting the Black September organization. 11 terrorists were put on the hit list, corresponding to the 11 murdered Israeli athletes. The assassination campaign lasted 9 years, resulting in the elimination of 10 targets. In August 1981, the final target was shot in an attack at a hotel in Poland but survived. In fact, many families of the Munich Massacre victims disagreed with Israel's retaliation, believing that killing only sows more pain and hatred. Regardless, their loved ones could not be brought back to life. The Munich Massacre shocked the world, becoming an indelible dark stain in the history of the Olympics. Following this event, the International Olympic Committee and the government tightened security at subsequent Olympic Games. Host countries also invested more in security efforts to ensure the safety of athletes and spectators. Immediately after the incident, Germany established the GSG-9 Special Task Force, also known as the 9th Counter-Terrorism Unit. Equipped with modern weaponry and well-trained, GSG-9 has become one of the world's leading counter-terrorism forces. Not only Germany, but many other countries also established their own counter-terrorism forces, following this event to effectively deal with any similar events should they occur. The 1972 Munich Massacre left behind valuable lessons on security and the fragility of peace. It stands as a painful reminder of the brutality of terrorism and its severe consequences. Although more than half a century has passed, the memory of this tragic event remains vivid in the minds of many. It is a wake-up call for humanity about the importance of solidarity, compassion, and collective efforts to build a peaceful world where violence and hatred have no place. The efforts to protect security at international events, especially the Olympics, were significantly intensified after this event. However, the specter of terrorism still looms, threatening our lives and our future. The lesson from Munich 1972 remains valuable. We must always be vigilant, ready to face any challenges, and strive to nurture peace and understanding through dialogue between the world's nations. Because only peace and unity can serve as a solid foundation for a prosperous and developed world. Today's video ends here.